Welcome to the chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 71 of Chalk Talk, brought to you by the Painted Lines. I'm your host, Shane Half, and you can follow me on Twitter at halfandhalf_TPL. I'm joined tonight by the best co-host in the game. You've heard him on the Tough Cover radio show. It's Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at MarkHenryJr_. Mark, how are you feeling this evening?
I'd be feeling better if the Phillies weren't on a 4-game losing streak. That's about to be a 5-game losing streak. But I'm going to put that aside and say I'm feeling great because last night was absolutely unbelievable. We're going to get into it. I can't wait to talk about it.
Last night? What happened last night? Did you have a good night last night?
I think we all had a good night as Eagles fans last night, but we're going to talk quite a bit about all the reasons we had a good night last night.
We are. We're going to get into it all. Full Week 2 NFL review. As we always do, we're going to lead off with the Philadelphia Eagles game, and then we'll bounce back to Thursday night, Chiefs-Chargers, and we'll work our way through the whole slate. And if you're lucky, listeners, we'll get you out of here in less than an hour and 40 minutes, which is how long last show was. But we're going to tone it down a little this week because we got the juices out week 1. And I don't know about you, but I was up till almost 1 o'clock doing post-game and stuff. I'm exhausted. So I don't have an hour and 45-minute show in me, but we're going to get into it all anyways. Mark told me before I hit go live that he had some takes to fire off. So we'll get into that as well. But Mark, why don't you lead us off with the Eagles hosting the Vikings? Obviously, I would say they embarrassed the Vikings, even though the score doesn't reflect what it was. Nobody scored in the second half, but 24-17, the Eagles win, and Kirk Cousins drops to 2-10 in his career on Monday Night Football. What did you see in this one?
I mean, we saw pretty much near perfection on both sides of the ball. I mean, there's obviously little things we can nitpick here and there. I don't think anybody could have realistically hoped for a better outcome than last night. I mean, maybe you could say they score a bit more in garbage time in the second half. Sure, they control that game the entirety of the game. There was not a moment of that game that I felt nervous, really, as an Eagles fan. I mean, Jalen Hurts, I thought that's the best game I've ever seen him play as a starting quarterback in the NFL. I think Darius Slay played the best game I've ever seen from an Eagles cornerback in my lifetime. And I've been critical of Darius Slay in the past, and not even critical, more so just I've expected more, and then I felt like he's been given credit because of a scheme that is so soft in coverage that it almost makes him look better because it avoids big plays. But this wasn't that wasn't the scheme. He was playing up on Jefferson. He was playing up on the line, and he was, there was a tweet going around from Coley Mick, who's a good follow on Twitter. He was saying Justin Jefferson did a really good job covering Darius Slay in this game because that's exactly what Jefferson had to do because Slay had him in jail. It's pretty crazy to see how Justin Jefferson went from being the story of week 1. Literally, I think NFL-wide, I don't think it's unfair to say that maybe Geno Smith, but I think Justin Jefferson was the story from week 1. And then in week 2, the story of week 2 might be the guy who covered Justin Jefferson, got 2 picks, maybe should have had 3 or 4. Gave the interception ball to James Harden. So as a Philly fan, as the Eagles Sixers fan in me, he's tugging at my heartstrings there. But I think Darius Slay, before we get to Hurts, which is obviously the most important conversation, I just think we have to start off with Darius Slay.
Yeah, I saw, you saw the stat going around that Darius Slay had more receptions than Jalen Reagor last night. But I also pointed out that Darius Slay also had more drops than Jalen Reagor. So take it for what it's worth.
Yeah.
But no, he played a phenomenal game. I said early in the game, that first third down, they didn't bring pressure. They looked like they were bringing pressure, and they got TJ Edwards a free run up the middle. But you had Slay one-on-one with Jefferson on the outside, and Slay won that rep. And I said, that's the defense that I want to see them play. But people have to understand that when you play that type of a defense, you are going to lose reps. And Slay just didn't. He got the best of Justin Jefferson for 4 quarters. There's not a single play that I remember where he got beat.
No, I totally agree. I mean, and then you go to the next part of the defense, and Dalvin Cook was absolutely bottled up. Kirk Cousins had pressure on him. Like from week 1 to week 2, what a dramatic difference in the way that the defense looked. It's, credit to Jonathan Gannon, which is something that a lot of people don't want to do, but it wasn't just as simple as snap counts. I think it had more to do with the scheme. What Jonathan Gannon was doing scheme wise was a joke in week
Mhm.
1. And then, I mean, how many times did we talk about it last year, Shane? I always, the two games that always jump out to me when criticizing Jonathan Gannon's scheme go back to last year when we played the Raiders and the Chargers. Because I remember Derek Carr and Justin Herbert just sat there and just took 5 yards, took 6 yards, and ate Jonathan Gannon's scheme alive. And I think that that's what we saw in the Lions game, coupled with the fact that they didn't stop the run. But then in week 2, it looked like a completely different scheme, a completely different defense. They were playing aggressively. They were doing a lot more disguising blitzes. They were doing a lot more disguising just in general of what they were doing. It seemed like, instead of just lining up and that being that. I loved what I saw from the defense, and I think that's the most important takeaway.
Yeah, they played schematically a very different game. They played a lot of odd fronts. They had five
Mm-hmm.
guys across the line of scrimmage, and there was nowhere for Dalvin Cook to run. The notable exception, the first drive out of halftime, the Eagles came out in their regular nickel 4-2-5 package. And if you remember, the Vikings went tempo because they were not going to allow the Eagles to get that personnel off the field. And it's, the Eagles are not a 4-2-5 team. They're just not. They struggle. And the Vikings walked right down the field before that interception. So that was what got them killed in week 1. And, I don't mind you putting it out there. And, kudos to the Vikings for seeing that and going up tempo there. But outside of that, the defense played great. TJ Edwards was winning one-on-one matchups. You definitely don't expect that. Just all around great performance by the defense and the offense. We'll get into the offense, but pressuring Cousins was a huge deal too. Philadelphia pressured Cousins on 33% of his dropbacks, and he was not comfortable in the pocket. I mean, the last interception that he threw, it was like second and third down. He was just jumping off his back foot and throwing lobs up to Justin Jefferson and hoping Jefferson would bail him out. So he was definitely seeing ghosts out there.
We did get lucky on that one Irv Smith drop streaking down the field. That could have been trouble, but
Yeah.
that bailed us out a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think we can move on from the defense. I guess the one thing, so Jordan Davis, I didn't look into it. Where was he snap wise in this game?
Similar snap count. Um,
It was a
and
couple more, right? I did see the number, but I didn't see the percentage.
yeah, I think it was like 23. Uh,
Oh, okay. I thought it was a couple more.
and one thing I noticed is a decent amount of the time in those odd fronts, they had Jordan Davis heads up on the center, and then they had Cox and Hargrave basically playing defensive end with Sweat and Hassan Reddick standing up as the fifth, as the edge guys on the edge. And that look means that Sweat or Reddick is going to drop into coverage some, which I'm totally fine with. That's going to happen. You don't want to get predictable in that. There was a
Seemed like
time
it
or there
seemed
was a
like it was
time or
Reddick
two
a
where
lot.
there was a time or two where they put Reddick in a bad situation, coverage wise. But and overall, I thought they pushed the right buttons, and it's hard to have any qualms with the way the defense played.
Yeah, no, for sure. I did see some people talking about the Reddick coverage stuff, and that's gonna happen. I think in the NFL, that's tight ends are basically the cheat code in terms of coverages because we don't have to get into it, but they're too big for secondary. They're too fast for linebackers and DN. So you're always going to be in some conundrum with tight ends if you don't have a perfect guy that's set up to cover them. But yeah, I think Hassan Reddick. I think people are just expecting him to be like a sack artist, so that when they see him dropping back in coverage, it's like, wait a second. But yeah, I mean, with the way maybe it's a problem if the defense played the way they did in week 1, and I saw that. But in week 2, if I'm seeing that with the way that they played, how could I have a problem with it? Yeah, I think the defensive game plan was perfect for Minnesota, and I think Minnesota did not game plan very well for our defense at all. Besides the comment you made with them realizing that they needed to keep that same personnel on the field, which I guess I'm just surprised because Kevin O'Connell really impressed me in week one with the different ways he was getting Justin Jefferson different looks and getting him in space and getting him on different guys, not just Green Bay's top corner or top two corners. They just didn't do that. They didn't do a good job of that against the Eagles. Maybe that's credit to us. Maybe they just didn't do as good of a job. I don't know, but
I think honestly that's more of a shot at Green Bay's defensive game plan. Green Bay just Jair Alexander asked for the matchup and they didn't give it to him. Darius Slay asked for it and Jonathan Gannon gave it to him. But yeah, flipping over to the Eagles offense, the Vikings defense, I thought the Vikings defensive game plan was just atrocious. We talked about sim pressures that the Vikings like to bring, and they didn't even simulate pressures. They just straight rushed for and dropped into soft zones. And I really didn't get that approach, and I certainly didn't get sticking with it when it wasn't working. But Hurts put on a clinic. Just incredible game. And ironically, the two best passes he threw all night, neither one counted. That ball that he dropped into Dallas Goedert that got broken up, that might be the best pass Jalen Hurts has ever thrown. Mm-hmm. He that's what when we talk about layering a throw, he's got a corner in the flat in sync coverage. He's got a linebacker closing from the inside, a safety closing from up top, and he puts that ball right on Goddard. And I mean, it's not a drop by Goddard. My initial reaction was, oh, that's a brutal drop. It wasn't a drop. That was a fantastic play by the corner. He got his arm right between Goddard's arms. That's just you made a great throw. Defender, you forced a great play from the defensive back to break that up. Even Goddard getting up for that ball. So that one was beautiful. And then the one where he breaks the pocket rolling left and he squared his shoulders on the run and just dropped a dime to Quez Watkins down the sideline that ended up being negated by a holding penalty. But those two throws I thought were his best throws of the night, and they didn't even count. He ends going 8 of 11 for 173 yards and 1 touchdown on passes over 10 air yards. So he hit the middle of the field. He layered throws. He threw to the left. I thought he did a fantastic job of keeping his eyes downfield when he broke the pocket. He was not looking to run first. I thought Hurts played a nearly flawless game.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think he played about as good as any. I didn't watch the Bills game very closely, so maybe count Josh Allen out of this. I watched pretty much every other game of week 2. I think Jalen Hurts played as well as anybody else in the NFL in week 2. I honestly believe that. So I was absolutely shocked with how bad the Vikings defense looked on all fronts in terms of getting pressure, in terms of stopping the run, in terms of stopping Jalen on the run, in terms of covering our guys. I said on the pregame with Dibes, we're going to find out a lot about both defenses, and that's going to determine this game because everyone was talking about Hurts. Everyone was talking about Cousins. And yeah, to a degree, Hurts playing amazing and Cousins playing poorly definitely had a huge impact on this game. But I guess it's like a chicken or the egg situation because I said the defenses in terms of is the Eagles defense in week 1, was that a bit of a fluke? Are we going to see them get positively regress in terms of what they were supposed to be? And the Vikings, with them getting an offensive-minded head coach, firing their defensive head coach in Mike Zimmer, completely changing the scheme, I think it was fair to expect defensive regression from Minnesota, even with some of the changes that they made. And then in week 1, they come out and they completely shut Green Bay down and make Aaron Rodgers look terrible. So that made me nervous going into this game. But then I think Minnesota kind of their defense turned into what we thought it was going to be coming into the year, an average to below average unit. So I think those were the two biggest kind of X factors in this game. But Jalen Hurts took everything that the Vikings defense gave him, whether that be getting a couple extra yards on the ground, whether that be throwing it to Goddard, throwing it to Smith. He really spread the ball around. Even Brown, I feel like a lot of people are talking about Brown's production being down. He still had 5 for 70 on 8 targets, like still a pretty good game. So he really spread the ball around, and that's nice to see because I know AJ Brown had such an amazing week 1. but he locked in on him at times. I thought he got a little fixated on him, missed running backs open in the flat. There was a couple times he missed Smith open. He really made it a point, especially early in this game, to get Smith the ball. And Smith got 7 targets, 7 receptions. And I think that was good to see them use Smith that way. He's always going to be efficient. So I think it's good to involve him in the offense as much as possible. And Hurts kind of kept all 3 mouths fed. And he obviously got the deep ball to Quez. So he used all 4 of our main weapons. And, I have absolutely no complaints. And yeah, I have the layered throw comment that you mentioned. I actually got in an argument with someone that I was watching the game with, because they were saying, oh, there's 4 people right there. Someone's got to be open. And maybe that's a fair argument, whatever. But taking that out of the equation, that's an incredible throw. That is the best throw he's ever made at any level. I think it's better than any throw he made at Oklahoma, any throw he made at Alabama. The way he was able to layer that throw to get it to the point where only Dallas Goedert had a chance to go up and get the ball, that's incredible stuff right there. And like you said, it forced an amazing play by that D-back.
Yeah, so through 2 weeks, Jalen Hurts is second in the league in adjusted completion percentage. He trails Josh Allen by 0.2%, and he leads the NFL in turnover-worthy play rate with 0%. He has not had a turnover-worthy play yet. And, I mean, he's got the interception on the ball to Kenny Gainwell, the screen pass. Hit him in the hands. Not his fault. That's not a turnover-worthy play. Hurts has just played – he's played so well through the first 2 weeks. And if he can continue that, the Eagles are scary. I mean, they've got an offensive line that will road grade you. And so you want to play single high to stop the run, he will take his shots on the boundaries against single coverage. He's got the weapons to do it. You want to go too high, now we're going to road grade you on the ground, and our quarterback can run. So we're +2 in the run game, not just +1. It's just when he plays like that, they're going to be a scary team.
They are scary. I mean, you look across the NFC right now, the NFC contenders do not look quite as scary and strong as they did coming into the year. I mean, I believe we did tiers for the NFC, right? On the podcast. And I think the top tier looked really scary coming into the year. You take a look at it now, and let's just, you look across it. The Rams have problems. The Rams have serious problems. We'll get into that. The 49ers, obviously what happened with Trey Lance. Jimmy G's fine, and, it's good for them that they kept him. Takes a lot of upside out of the equation, though, that, I think we'll get into it more, but I think the big X factor for them was having the upside of maybe a Josh Allen type of player, or even 80% of that in terms of his athleticism. The Bucks, I think they're really good. I think the Bucks are probably the class of the NFC. They haven't looked great, especially on offense. And then at that point, Green Bay, we just talked about how bad of a job they did against Minnesota. We just took care of Minnesota really easily. The Eagles are starting to look like a good bet to compete in the NFC in a serious way. I'm at the point right now where I think they might be the second best team in the NFC.
Yeah. And we will certainly see big tests coming up next week for them. Huge. They'll play the Commanders, who obviously lost to the Lions. They've got that common opponent already, but weird things happen when you play Washington. So that'll be a big one, but we'll get into that later on a preview. So anything else you want to get out here on the Eagles game before we move on to the Chiefs-Chargers?
Yeah, just how good the rushing game was. I mean, Miles Sanders, I've been a long time hater, I guess, of Miles Sanders. Not a hater, but just I've always thought he was a bit overrated. I've always been a little annoyed at his running style. I'm a guy who likes the running backs just taking what the O-line and taking what the defense is giving him. And in the past, I think Miles has danced a lot, and I think he's made some low IQ plays in the past. There's a couple that come to mind with us trying to waste time and him running out of bounds. There's been things in the past that have drove me crazy. I think Miles Sanders has been near perfect through 2 weeks, and I know you're better with the with the number stuff than I am in terms of the expected yards per carry and stuff like that. I don't know if you could find those numbers, but I'd be interested to see what Miles Sanders' yards per carry and what his expected yards per carry is, because I feel like he's taking everything that this O-line is giving him and maximizing on those instead of just 2 yards, 2 yards, 2 yards, 60 yards. it's much more consistent with Miles this year than it ever has been in the past so far through 2 games. Hurts, obviously, 11 carries for 57 yards. Boston Scott, 4 carries for 19 yards. Even when he had a big 16-yard carry that on a big first down. Gainwell, I think Gainwell is probably going to be in the doghouse a little bit after that dropped pass leading to the interception. And with Scott doing so well, with Miles doing so well, I could see Gainwell's opportunities decreasing. And honestly, I could see Miles being a little bit of a workhorse with the fact that he got 17 carries in this game, 80 yards. And I feel like 17 for 80 doesn't put into perspective how good I actually think he was in this game.
Yeah, so he is, per next gen stats, he has 0.88 rushing yards over expectation per attempt. Mm-hmm. That is fifth in the league among backs with more than 20 carries, which is kind of cheating because there's 2 ahead of him that have exactly 20. So if you count them, he'd be 7th in the league in terms of getting more than would be expected. So yeah, he's been off to a hot start to the year.
Yeah, and it's not something I expected. So that's just another thing to add to reasons to be high on this team and reasons to start thinking a little big. We're going to get more into it, but I'm glad we're not in the AFC.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's throw it over to the AFC. Oh, actually, before we do that, one thing you said that Eagles fans were never nervous. I was nervous one time in this game, and it was when that field goal got blocked. So the Eagles come out. Minnesota has marched down the field, and they end up throwing an interception in the red zone. But the Eagles get down, they're kicking a field goal. Guy comes off the edge and blocks it, and it gets scooped up. And I'm thinking scoop and score. Now it's 24-14. All of a sudden the momentum's gone, and Aaron Siposs, the punter, who's the holder, runs it down and makes a tackle. I'm just telling you right now, if you get a scoop and score opportunity and a punter gets up off of his knee and runs you down and makes a tackle, you might need to find a new career path. So shout out to Aaron Siposs for what underrated big play of the game.
Yeah, I think I at that point had relieved my nervousness. I at that point was like, all right. I think the interception was like my sigh of relief. I was like, this game's over. Even when the kick got blocked, I was like, we'll be okay. I wasn't nervous in Kirk doing anything to scare me. And that's kind of just what I kept repeating to myself all game was like, I can't believe I was afraid of Kirk Cousins. Like all day long, I thought the Vikings were going to beat us. And I said it on the pregame. I picked the Vikings. Like I was very nervous about that game. I called it our hardest game of the year, potentially. It was Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins tricked me. It was Kirk Cousins all along. So that's my fault for letting the Kirk Cousins trick me.
It had less to do for me with being afraid of Kirk Cousins and more to do with being afraid of Jonathan Gannon.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson. But that was really what I was afraid of. But when it came down to it, it was Kirk freaking Cousins. I need to just, next time we're playing the Vikings, if we're ever playing the Vikings, or next time we're playing whoever Kirk Cousins is the quarterback of, I just need to remind myself, hey man, it's Kirk Cousins. Don't get nervous. But I will just say one funny anecdote before we move on, because I don't have anything else to say. A lot of people out there had Eagles team total over 24.5. That was what the number was. 24 points at halftime. And then they don't get another point. That is a rough beat when you consider the blocked field goal, the Gainwell interception. That is a brutal gambling beat. That's why they call it gambling, though.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about my gambling. So let's move on. So let's get into the Thursday night game. The Chargers travel to Kansas City. They take on the Chiefs, and they lose a heartbreaker, 24-27. I had the Chiefs and the Chargers number 2 and 3 in my power rankings coming into the week. Neither one of them moved after this game. I thought the Chargers proved that they deserved to be there. They lost their center, Corey Linsley, the right guard, Trey Pipkins, in the game with injuries, and Justin Herbert felt that loss. We all saw the big hit he takes. Sits out a play, comes back in, and just he has the scramble on the next play where he just can't even throw it. And then you set up 4th down where he rips a 35-yard post route into a tight window. It just, man, Justin Herbert is for real. That injury, though, that's worth monitoring, because that could derail their season if he's not able to get back to 100%. Jalen Watson's 99-yard pick six, though, that put the Chiefs in the lead, and they hang on. The Chargers had opportunities for interceptions. They just didn't bring them in. Like, it wasn't the best Mahomes game, but they still won against an AFC contender, both of our Super Bowl picks. And so, the Chiefs looked good. And I honestly, I thought the Chargers looked good too. I came away really impressed with both teams.
Yeah, I actually thought Mahomes played really well too. I think he didn't make big plays and he didn't take a lot of chances. But I did think he actually played really well, even if I don't have the numbers right in front of me. But the Chiefs are the Chiefs, man. I mean, everyone kind of counted them out a little bit, and it became in vogue to not expect the Chiefs to be in the mix for the Super Bowl. And I'm maybe I'm part of the problem. Maybe we're part of the problem for picking the Chargers to win the division and then go to and win the Super Bowl. But that always had more to do with the Chargers than it had to do with the Chiefs for me. I think, like you said, these are not only two of the top three teams in the AFC, these are two of the top three teams in the NFL. So I do not think less of the Chargers whatsoever for losing to Kansas City by 3 on Thursday night on the road. So if anything, it makes me feel better about them, especially with the injuries, like you said.
It's not only a shame that these teams can't meet in the Super Bowl. It's a shame only one of them can win a division, because they're both worthy division winners. And I mean, to be honest, we're 2 weeks in, and we'll get into these other teams later, but they're the only two teams that have a shot in that division.
Yeah, and which is what I think we kind of always agreed on that all off season. People wanted to make the Broncos a thing. A lot of people, what I should say is, a lot of people wanted to make the Broncos a thing. Everyone thought the Broncos were the trendy Super Bowl pick or the divisional pick. And then there was a small smattering, a lot of smart gamblers out there actually really like the Raiders to make a run at the division. It was always the Chiefs and the Chargers. It was always going to be those two teams. They are so by far the most talented rosters with the two best quarterbacks by far in that division. And then obviously the Chiefs have Andy Reid, and I actually thought Brandon Staley called a great game in this game too. I think he's kind of fixed a lot of the problems on defense, especially in the running game. I guess that's not true though, because Clyde had a really long run. But besides that, I thought they did a good job. This was a game that could have went either way, and I think it probably will go either way next time when they play in LA. Obviously, the Chargers don't have a great home field advantage, but I think just not playing in Kansas City is a home field advantage in and of itself. So I think that the Chiefs won 27-24. I bet the next time it'll be 30-27 Chargers.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's roll on to Sunday. The Miami Dolphins traveling to Baltimore. Crazy game. Miami wins 42-38. Tua had a rough start to this game. He throws 2 picks in the first half. Then the Dolphins roar back from a 3-score deficit in the fourth quarter. Tua ends up 36-50 passing. He threw for 469 yards and 6 touchdowns with 2 picks. You got Jalen Waddle, 171 yards, 2 touchdowns. Tyreek Hill, 190 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Dolphins' offense is scary. And it stinks for Lamar Jackson put up an MVP caliber performance, but once again, there was no help for him. He's 21-29, 318 yards and 3 touchdowns. He ran 9 times for 119 yards and a touchdown on the ground. But with the 3-score lead in the fourth quarter trying to ice the game, there's just no running game. The running backs had 28 yards on 14 carries, and the Ravens couldn't put the game away. It is Lamar Jackson by himself trying to win games for the Ravens.
Yeah, he used his 2 best receivers in Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews as much as he could. They both had over 100 yards. What the Ravens continue to put around Lamar Jackson is shameful, and it's a joke. And I know that we laud the Ravens as this, world-class organization that does a great job in the draft. They can do that all they want. At a certain point, they have to spend some money. Outside of the draft, they have to go fix their problems, whether that be to get him a weapon of a running back, whether that be to get him a weapon at receiver, which is long past due, whether that be make sure that you have the best defense in the NFL. Make sure that your defense is deep. Make sure that your defense isn't going to give up 42 points to Tua Tagovailoa and give up 6 passing touchdowns to Tua. I mean, it's absolutely a joke what Baltimore has surrounded Lamar Jackson with. But on the other side of things, I mean, we clear out the next half hour for me to just talk about Tua? No, I'm joking.
But I'll give you 5 minutes.
I will just say, you mentioned the 2 interceptions. The one I think was just a great play. And I know this sounds like a Tua apologist. The one was absolutely not his fault. It was like batted up and it was a tip pick. The other one I would say was just a great play. And I mean, you can call that his fault, but I mean, I'm happy to see him taking chances more than he had in years past. So I'm fine with him taking a chance to fit the ball into Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle. And I think both of his picks were actually to Tyreek Hill. So he started the game rough, but I tweeted it out. I believe at the time, I'd have to look at what the scores were. Yeah, I think it was 35-14, and the Dolphins were driving. They had a 7-play, 75-yard drive, and I tweeted out, the Dolphins are getting beat up, but Tua is looking great in this game. I was really impressed. I was like, maybe it's not a good outcome for the Dolphins, but at least you feel a lot better about your quarterback. And then, 4 touchdowns later, they go and win the game. This is one of the crazier comebacks of all time. I had the Dolphins plus 4.5 in this game, and it's one of those games where in your mind you're just like, all right, let me just like put that, almost like move that to the trash file. It's like I don't have to think about this game anymore. Like I can focus on, I think I had the Steelers Patriots. I had Steelers plus 3.5, so I was like I could focus on Steelers Patriots really because the Dolphins Ravens is over. It wasn't. One of the crazier comebacks, but probably not even the craziest comeback of the day.
So let's get into that one. The Jets go to Cleveland. It's literally the next one on my note sheet here, so you segued into that perfectly. The Jets win 31-30. Joe Flacco throws for 307 yards and 4 touchdowns, and the Jets have what's probably the most improbable come-from-behind victory. The Browns are up 24-17 with 2 minutes and 15 seconds left. And Nick Chubb breaks free and he scores a touchdown, 12-yard touchdown run. Now, the Jets had no timeouts. Had he gone down after he picks up the first down, they can kneel the game out and they win. But he scores. Cade York misses a PAT that would have made it a 14-point lead. Now, if you notice that name, it's because I mentioned it last week. He was the hero that hits the long field goal to beat Baker Mayfield. Well, he misses a PAT. No big deal, right? It's still a 13-point lead with 1:59 left. Well, the Jets score. They get an onside kick. They score again, and they end up winning the game 31-30. So crazy game. The Jets had a 0.3% win probability after the Nick Chubb touchdown, but the miracle happened. And again, you just think about how improbable that is. The Jets scored 9 points in week 1. They scored 14 points in the final 82 seconds of week 2. Just a crazy game.
Yeah, just insane. And this is on the other end of the spectrum. I said earlier I had Dolphins plus 4.5. I had Browns minus 6. Oh. So that's brutal. That's as brutal as it gets. They go up 13. Cade York misses the extra point. I immediately knew the Jets were going down the field and scoring. Now, what I thought was going to happen was that the Jets go down the field, they score, and then I push. And then, the Browns win by 6, and it's like, oh, that's so annoying. No, I lost the bet. The Jets go and get the onside kick. They go and score, and they win by 1. I was like, I actually might be at fault. So Cleveland Browns fans, you heathens, you can direct your hate at me because I tweeted it out. I said, can't believe this Browns bet is going to push, and then that Browns bet lost. So I might have mushed it. I might have jinxed it. Sorry, Cleveland, but I mean. We won't get into. I don't know if you saw it. You're a little too classy. You're a little classier than I am. But some of the shenanigans of the Browns fans, I don't know if you saw it. Just garbage fan base, garbage city. That's all I have to say.
Yep. All right, let's roll on to another one. We've got Indianapolis getting blanked by the Jags, 24-0. Indianapolis has lost 8 straight in Jacksonville. The last 3 times the Colts have been shut out, it was by the Jags. Guess who's got a Doug Peterson Coach of the Year ticket at plus 1,800? Right here. And unfortunately,
Nice.
Mike McDaniel's probably going to cost me that bet, but it's
Ooh.
still a good one. We'll see. Trevor Lawrence had the best day of his NFL career. A lot of that going around. Tua, Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts. He goes 25 of 30 for 235 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah, I thought he executed the quick game really well. He found Christian Kirk 6 times for 78 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kirk, who, again, overpaid, but he's made a big impact on the offense. The Colts had 10 possessions. They had 5 punts and 5 turnovers. They only had 71 yards in the first half. And Jonathan Taylor, my guy, my MVP guy from last year, he had 5 carries for 4 yards in the first half. Like, the Colts offensive line is a problem. Jacksonville embarrassed them. 5 sacks, 18 pressures on the day. The Colts, stick a fork in the Colts. They're done.
I totally agree. And, we give out a lot of takes on this podcast, especially in the preseason, when all we have are takes. That's all we have to go off of in the preseason. We're going to swing and miss on some. I'm going to get picks wrong. But it's nice to know sometimes when you're so confident in something and people are telling you you're crazy, it's nice to know 2 weeks in that we were absolutely right on a couple things. Number 1 on that list is the Colts. And number 1 on my personal list is Matt Ryan. That guy is a total fraud. He's cooked. He's a statue. He's a shell of what he once was. Everyone that tried to act like Matt Ryan over Carson Wentz with some dramatic improvement should be forced to watch the game that I watched on Sunday. Colts Jags, that offense was anemic. And you mentioned the O-line, and it's a problem. It's Matt Ryan, too. Matt Ryan can't move at all. How many times has he sacked? 5 sacks.
5 sacks, 18
31
pressures.
yards. 18 pressures. 5 sacks for 31 yards, by the way. So pretty costly sacks right there. I don't know how else to say it other than I was right. We were right. The Colts stink. Under 10 wins was a joke. I can't believe Vegas set their over-under at 10 wins with Matt Ryan, with Michael Pittman as your only real receiver. And you felt that in this game. Michael Pittman was out. Alec Pierce, their number 2 receiver, who hasn't shown himself to be any good yet, but he's a rookie. He's a rookie receiver who they're excited about. He was out. And you're looking at the names that they had to throw to. It's like, it's Ashton Doolin. It's Nyheim Hines. It's Mo Alley Cox. It's Desmond Patman. The Colts, people love to give Chris Ballard credit. People love the Colts. For some reason, there's something there about the Colts that people love. Chris Ballard has failed at his job to figure out the quarterback position and stop putting a 1-year Band-Aid going from Brissett to Rivers to Wentz to Ryan, and then they're going to try to do the same exact thing next year. They'll probably go get Kirk Cousins. They'll do a 1-year Band-Aid every single year instead of actually drafting someone and trying to fix the problem long term or giving up assets to go and get a real option at quarterback. And then he's also completely failed at getting offensive weapons outside of Jonathan Taylor, getting guys who can catch the ball and actually do something with it after they catch it. So, Indy, I agree. We cross someone off every week, and we really shouldn't cross someone off in the AFC South because I think that division stinks.
Oh,
but
the Jags are winning this division.
I'm there with you. I probably agree at this point. We're gonna get to another game. I will just say, I think Tennessee has a much better chance at figuring out their problems than Indy does.
I agree with that 100%.
Indy's got problems. Problems. They might be worse than the Texans. We'll get to that too. I'm in on the Texans.
All right. Tampa Bay at New Orleans. Tampa wins 20-10. The offense looked bad. We got Tom Brady throwing the tablet on the sideline. Good thing, though, they got the little case on those that protects it when a 4-year-old drops it or when a 45-year-old throws a temper tantrum on the sideline. Mike Evans and Marshawn Lattimore, when they're on the same field, explosive things happen. This is, the third time that Mike Evans has been ejected for getting into a fight with Marshawn Lattimore. He's suspended for week 3. He's appealing that. I haven't heard what the resolution was. I don't think there has been one yet, but that was a net win for this Bucks though, because after the double ejection, the Bucks offense rallied. Hat tip to Jameis Winston for doing Jameis Winston thing. He gets the hat trick of picks. The offense has looked bad for the Bucks. They put up 19 on the Cowboys. They put up 20 on the Saints. The offense has looked bad. The Todd Bowles defense has looked really good. It was a big day for Jamel Dean with 2 picks, 1 in the end zone. On the flip side, the Saints offense has looked bad too. Like the receivers, I think the receivers have looked good. Jarvis Landry has done more than I thought. Michael Thomas looks like himself. Chris Olave looks like he is a guy. They got a trio of receivers. Jameis just holds the ball too long. He turns it over too much. I'm out on the. I've not been in on the Saints. I thought they looked bad in week 1. I thought they looked bad in week 2 as well.
Yeah, I mean, we just talked at length about something that this podcast was absolutely right about. And I don't feel quite as vindicated yet here because the defense is very good for New Orleans.
Yeah, they're still going to win some games for sure.
We'll see, because I think Jameis is that much of a problem. Jameis is a problem. Jameis in this game, I mean, he might have went 25 for 40 and had 236 yards, 3 interceptions, and they were Jameis interceptions. They were as Jameis got. He also held the ball for way too long, took 6 sacks. He had a QBR of 13.7 in this game. And this is, by the way, he had a good fourth quarter against Atlanta last week, and I think it was one of those things where Atlanta's defense just ran out of steam, and they played a lot more guys in week 2 against the Rams than they did in week 1 against the Saints. Through 3 quarters, Jameis Winston was 10 for 18 for 56 yards against the Atlanta Falcons. And then we saw what we saw in this game. So for 7 quarters, Jameis Winston has been largely incompetent to start this NFL season. So I think the Saints have serious question marks all across that offense. And people took the fourth quarter of week 1 against the Falcons to think that the Saints were fixed and think that the Saints offense was awesome and think that the Saints were a contender. I don't think we'll be talking about that going forward. I will just say, I know this isn't the preview show. Saints-Panthers is a legitimate loser leaves town match next week. There's a couple loser leaves town matches, 2 in particular that come to mind. That one is the loser of that game I don't want to hear about. The Panthers, if they're 0-3, fire Matt Rule or get off the pot. And then if the Saints are 1-2 after a loss to the Panthers and then looking as bad as they've looked for 7 out of 8 quarters, I'm done with them. The loser of that game, I'm done with. We can stick a fork in that one.
We're crossing off somebody next week too, so we should do that. We should keep track of who we've crossed off.
We did.
Who did we cross off last week?
So the problem is we did cross off the Jets, but we also crossed off the Cowboys. That might have been premature. I don't know if you agreed with it. I crossed off the Cowboys. It was a personal cross-off, and then we both crossed off the Colts today.
Yeah. Our official podcast, we can only cross off one a week.
So yeah, because Jets,
got Jets now, or Jets last week. We got Colts this week. So
all right,
next week,
tune
in. We'll see. Okay, let's roll on to the Panthers, who you mentioned. They traveled to New York. They drop one to the Giants. Giants win 19-16. This was the Graham Gano revenge game, the greatest of all revenge games. Goes 4-4 on field goals, 1 of 1 on extra points. He accounted for 13 of the Giants' 19 points against his former team. So if you want a revenge game, it was the Graham Gano revenge game. It's been 2 games. It's already clear that neither Baker Mayfield nor Matt Rule is the answer. Of course, that answer was clear at the end of last season too, but you know how that goes in the NFL. On the Giants side, the Giants are on the right path. Brian Daboll, he appears to be infusing a winning culture there. They still lack a lot of talent, but they've got home games against Dallas and Chicago up next. A 4-0 start for the Giants is not only possible, I think it's probable at this point. We'll see. The Cowboys obviously going to be might give them some fits on defense, Micah Parsons, and we'll get into that on preview. But the Giants could be sitting in going into week 5 at 4-0. We won't talk about what happens after that when they play a real schedule, but they didn't win the easy ones last year. They haven't won the easy ones for years, and they're doing it now. So kudos to the Giants. They've got a lot to be excited about, I think, in Brian Daboll.
Oh, I think Dable's a great coach. I think Brian Dable's a great coach. But I will just say, I did not walk out of this game impressed with the Giants. I did not walk out of this game thinking more of the Giants. I walked out of this game thinking the Panthers are one of the worst run organizations I've seen in a long time. And this team right now is way too talented to be as bad as it is and to be as lifeless as it is most of the time. I want to see the real quick. Let me go into the play-by-play. The last drive of the game here, the Panthers got the ball back with 3 minutes and 34 seconds with they were down 3, and I've never felt less confident ever in an offense to go and get a field goal. And they didn't. They went 3 and out and punted, which is so pathetic that they just punted the ball. But whatever, that's what they did. I've never been the Panthers got the ball, and I told the person I was watching with, I was like, it's a joke, but the Giants, like, I'm not worried at all that the Giants are going to lose this game. Like, Baker Mayfield is not it. I'm glad almost that he was traded, so we can all agree, without the talent he had around him in Cleveland, we can all agree, like, yeah, this guy's not a starting quarterback in the NFL, because it's pretty clear that he's not. So, I mean, Matt Rule, Baker Mayfield, got to go. They both got to go. Carolina's got to rebuild again and get a new staff again. Carolina, sheesh.
Yeah, a rough time to be a Panthers fan, and I know one because he messaged me and asked who the Panthers are going to hire next year. So
it's a little early for that. They should have kept Joe Brady around and just hired him. I don't even know what Joe Brady's doing right now. Do you, Shane?
I don't know. Maybe he's the next coach of the Panthers. We'll see.
Neither do I. You go to the next topic. I'll look it up. We'll touch back on that later.
All right. So the next game is New England at Pittsburgh. New England wins 17-14. Mac Jones and the offense continue to struggle this year, although it is notable he fared better than Joe Burrow did a week ago. Although, TJ Watt out definitely makes a difference. But the Patriots were able to grind this game out on the ground. They had 124 rushing yards on 31 carries. It's not pretty. It's not a good total, but it was enough to get by the Steelers and get a win. For the Steelers, 2 things are apparent to me after watching this game. One of them I already knew for sure, and that's that TJ Watt is huge for this defense. Mm-hmm. And there was no pressure on Mac Jones. He was only pressured on 2 of his 35 dropbacks. So TJ Watt's only going to miss like 5 to 6 weeks. That's huge. They need to stay afloat until he gets back. And the way they do that, and this is the second thing that was apparent, is it's Kenny Pickett time. Mitch Trubisky has 5.1 yards per attempt. It is the lowest in the NFL through 2 weeks. It's Ben Roethlisberger all over again. His adjusted completion percentage is 63.6%. That is the exact same as his real completion percentage. Like, this offense is as maxed as it can be with Mitch Trubisky, and it's atrocious. And so if Kenny Pickett is not the starter in week 3, then Kenny Pickett was a bust. You shouldn't have drafted him. If you're not willing to look at how Mitchell Trubisky has played week 1 and 2, and I wouldn't have done it. I understand why they started Trubisky to begin with. Mm-hmm. But if you're looking at what Trubisky has put on the field the first 2 weeks and you do not start Kenny Pickett, then it tells you all that you need to know about the Steelers' faith in Kenny Pickett. So I know Mitch voted on his team captain, all that. He stinks. It's time to go to Pickett and let him develop.
Especially with all the weapons Pittsburgh has. I mean, Najee is being ruined. Najee, 15 carries for 49 yards in this game. Najee's a really good running back. Then you have Deontay Johnson, who has still been pretty good with Trubisky. He's the only guy really on the offense who hasn't really suffered production-wise. But he's a really, really good receiver. He's one of the best receivers in the league at getting separation. Chase Claypool's an athlete. George Pickens has literally 2 catches on the season after being the story of the preseason. Pat Freiermuth has done pretty well. He's got a touchdown in both games, I think. But these are weapons that should theoretically make it easier for a rookie quarterback in Kenny Pickett to come in and adjust, or should make it easier for Mitch Trubisky to not look terrible. So I don't have a ton to add to what you said about the Steelers, so I'll focus a little bit on the Patriots, and more so the Patriots offense than the Patriots defense. I've seen a lot of negativity about Mac Jones coming out of this game, And I wouldn't describe myself as a Mac Jones guy. I don't think I'm a Mac Jones guy. I think I'm in the middle. I watched this whole game because I had Steelers plus 3.5, which they did cash just barely by a half point. But I felt scared of Mac Jones, to be honest, this whole game. And I know that they only put up 17 yards. I know they didn't put up a ton, or 17 points. I know that they didn't put up a ton of yards, but I felt like they got a first down every time they needed to. I felt like they made a play happen every time they needed to in this game, whether that be with Mac Jones making a play, because I did think he made a couple really good throws in this game. And I always do give him a little bit of credit because I think he's dealing with pretty average to bad weapons in New England, or whether that be on the ground. It seemed like Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson were a legitimate 1-2 punch in this game. Damian Harris is, in my opinion, one of the more underrated running backs I've ever seen. I think he's exactly what I would want in a running back personally. And he got 15 carries for 71 yards. He had a touchdown. He had the first down to seal the game at the end of the game. Ramondre Stevenson, 9 carries for 47 yards. That's a pretty good split right there, 15 carries to 9 carries. I really liked what I saw out of the Patriots offense in this game, even if it doesn't show necessarily on paper. But it does show on paper for Nelson Aguilar and Jacoby Myers. Both had really big games. Aguilar had one of the better catches you'll see in the NFL all year in this game. But I actually walked out of this game really impressed by the Patriots offense, which is not something I was expecting to say, especially since they only scored 17 points and put up a low yardage number. But I actually went back and watched this game afterwards because I saw so much negativity out of Mac Jones. And yeah, I thought he played a really good game, actually.
All right. Well, something to keep an eye on, especially, when they're not playing a defense that's as good as the Steelers, who certainly made Joe Burrow's life miserable in week 1. So let's roll on into the afternoon slate here. The Atlanta Falcons, they go to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. They lose this one 31-27. The Rams almost falconed in this game. They were up 28-3. A lead that might sound familiar to Falcons fans. The Rams almost falconed, giving up the lead until the Falcons out-falconed them, throwing an interception in the end zone. I mean, Atlanta, they intercept Stafford. They score a touchdown. They block a punt for a touchdown. They strip Cooper Kupp. But then Jalen Ramsey comes up with the goal line interception to save the day. And so the Rams are that close to starting 0-2. The Falcons were that close to getting one of the 5 wins that I need them to get to cash my over 4.5 team total wins. They've been so close each of the first 2 weeks, but no cigar. For the Rams, they continue to have no run game. Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson combined for 91 yards on 25 carries. That's 3.6 yards per carry. Not ideal when your quarterback's got elbow issues. Cooper Kupp got 5+ catches again in this game. He's done that in 23 games now, which ties DeAndre Hopkins for the second longest streak in the NFL. You want to take a shot at who the longest streak is of 5+ catches?
Oh, it's Monra, right?
No, it's Antonio Brown.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I know Amon-Ra Brown broke. Yeah.
Yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown broke one for it was the Lions franchise. He broke
okay.
streak last year.
Yeah.
So Kupp, if he keeps that streak going, he could break the record week 17 on Sunday Night Football against the Chargers. So just something to keep an eye on as the season goes. On the Falcons side, Drake London leads all rookies. Drake London, who was notably very high on our wide receiver draft boards. But Drake London leads all rookies with 160 yards through 2 weeks. Granted, it is at the expense of Kyle Pitts, who just isn't getting the touches. But the Falcons continue to be a fun team, which, to be honest, has to feel like I know, Falcons fans will be disappointed at losing both of those games, but coming into a season expecting to be bad, and they're a fun team to watch. They're one of the teams that is going to be on my monitor when the Eagles aren't playing. So kudos to the Falcons, and hopefully they can bring one home in the next couple of weeks.
Before I forget this, I do have something to say about the Falcons. Joe Brady, by the way, is the Bills quarterback coach. What a cushy job to go land at, to be Josh Allen's coach. That's a great job by Joe Brady. But anyway, the Falcons, if anything proves my point about how bad Matt Ryan's been the last couple of years, it's how full of life this Falcons offense looks now that he's gone. Mariota's not even playing great, but you watch the offense and it's imaginative. They're doing things. People are getting the ball to people in space. The one thing I will say, and I've been a huge Arthur Smith guy on this podcast dating back to last year, and I think he's a really, really good play caller. You need to find the way to get the ball to Kyle Pitts, man. It's getting ridiculous how he's just being lost in the shuffle, and maybe we overrated him as such an impact player. I know you did as well. Thought he could be Travis Kelce, and I still think he can be, but I'd be lying if I said I'm not tremendously disappointed in Kyle Pitts' production so far. But yeah, I think the Falcons are going to continue to be really, really pesky. I feel like everyone just ignored the fact that they drafted the best receiver from the draft class in Drake London. Like everyone just completely ignored the fact that they were adding another stud into that offense. And when people were talking about that offense, they were like, oh, it's Kyle Pitts and what else? And it's like, well, Cordero had a good year last year, and they drafted Drake London, and Mariota can move around a little bit, and they helped out at the O-line a little bit. Like, the Falcons are going to be pesky. They're not a team that I would be betting big spreads against because I think they're going to keep games close, and I still feel really good about our bet on Falcons over 4.5 wins. That's a big one for me as well. I feel really good about that bet still.
Yeah, same. They're like I said, they're a fun team to watch. They kind of run a college-y type offense with Mariota, and college is where Mariota shined. It's fun to see. It doesn't have a high ceiling, but it's got a decent enough floor.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So, all right, let's go on to Seattle traveling to San Francisco. Seattle loses this game 27-7, but the bigger storyline from this game is Trey Lance leaving the game with a broken ankle. So his season is over, which is that's devastating. I mean, he was a raw prospect from an FCS school to begin with. Started 1 year, basically. He had the 1 year, 2 games, the COVID year. He entered as a raw prospect. Now he's going to enter his 3rd season next September, having thrown 132 game passes in the last 45 months. And it sucks for the 49ers trying to build around this guy. It sucks for Trey Lance trying to develop. He's going to enter the 3rd year of his contract, basically having thrown 100 NFL passes. Now, the 49ers are going to be fine because Jimmy G is still there. What this does to the 49ers is it narrows their range of outcomes. Their ceiling is now much lower because Trey Lance and his tools aren't there, but their floor is much higher because Jimmy G is there. And that floor is high because it was a Jaquiski Tartt dropped arm punt away from a Super Bowl appearance last year. And I don't think they would have won. Maybe. The defense is really good.
I think they could have.
Yeah, they could have. So 49ers fans, that it sucks. But you get the win. You're 1-1. And the 49ers are very much contenders in the NFC, even with Jimmy G. He looked good in the game. The Seattle offense flipping sides here, it was just dreadful against the 49ers defense. Their only points came off a blocked field goal, and the 49er defense is just so good. Like Nick Bosa had 7 pressures on 25 pass rushing snaps. He came away with 2 sacks. Like this defense is good enough that Jimmy G and Kyle Shanahan and Jimmy G's fates are apparently intertwined. Kyle Shanahan just can't get rid of the guy. He can't get away from him. So he's stuck with him for another year. And, we know what the offense is going to be. I'm anxious to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I could not really say it any better than you said it. The range of outcomes thing is a great point by you. That's exactly how I feel. I picked San Fran to go to the Super Bowl. Am I totally backing off of that and saying San Fran can't do it? No, I think that'd be stupid too, because I think we saw that they can do it last year. But I'd be lying if I said that I feel as good about it as I did before the year, because like I said, Trey Lance provided this unknown to what was already such an amazingly loaded offense in terms of a good O-line, George Kittle at tight end, Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, Elijah Mitchell, who's also hurt, by the way, for a while. And then Trey Lance's rushing ability added such an unknown factor into what was such a good offense already. And, oh, yeah, I know you're not quite as high as I am on him, but I think it's no matter how you slice it. And I actually, is Kyle Shanahan, in your opinion, a top 5 play caller?
Yeah, for sure. Kyle Shanahan X's and O's is definitely up there.
Yeah.
Elite of the elite. Most of my issues I take with Shanahan come down to game management and personnel management. I think he's got way too quick way too quick of a trigger on his young
Mm-hmm.
guys. And I think he makes some questionable decisions in terms of fourth downs, clock management things. But heck, Andy Reid, I'd say, is a top 3 coach in the league, and he's been plagued by clock management issues his whole career. So, yeah, Kyle Shanahan, what he can do X's and O's is top notch.
So all of that taken into consideration, the 49ers are still a contender. They just don't have the same excitement and unknown ceiling that they had before. I totally agree with everything you said. The only thing I have to say about Seattle is don't let box scores fool you, because I watched this game and I'm just pulling up box scores as we go to kind of jog my memory. Geno going 24 for 30 in this game is so Geno Smith. It's unbelievable. I love Geno so much. I hope he plays for 7 more years as a backup quarterback in the NFL. He's probably earned that, at least with week 1 and like week 2. You look at the stats 2 years from now when you're trying to sign a backup, it's like, he was pretty good in Seattle. We'll bring him in. So, Geno Smith, shout out to you for earning yourself a couple more paychecks.
Yeah, I bet this game. I took Seattle plus 8.5 with the idea that Geno was the safe quarterback in this matchup.
Mm-hmm.
And then Trey Lance gets hurt, and Jimmy G is now also a safe quarterback. So that one blew up in my face. So again, don't follow me for gambling advice. Go with Mark.
Well, don't follow me last Saturday, but besides that, yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's roll on here. Cincinnati Bengals traveling to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. Dallas wins 20-17, drops Cincinnati to 0-2. Mark, do we have a quarterback controversy in Dallas? Cooper Rush engineers a game-winning drive, put the Cowboys in the win column.
I don't want to talk about the Cowboys. I don't think the Cowboys are the story here, even though it is Cooper Rush, which is hilarious. Even though, they won the game. The story is, what the heck is going on in Cincinnati? This is unbelievable, the way that they're finding ways to lose these 2 games. And we were not high on Cincinnati. That's why it's so funny.
I pulled where I gave the Bengals as a team that made the playoffs this year that would miss, or made the playoffs last year that would miss the playoffs this year. I pulled that clip and tweeted it after this game. It's just unbelievable. Like, the Bengals offensive line is a problem. Joe Burrow's been sacked 13 times in 2 games. That's once on every 7.8 dropbacks. He's on pace to be sacked 111 times this year. And I mean, he was seen on the field yelling to Zach Taylor on the sideline to stop going empty. No more empty. I don't know if you saw that clip, but
yeah.
Zach Taylor is not a good coach, and I don't think he can fix what's wrong with this offense.
No, I totally agree, and I think we're seeing the defense, even though it only gave up 20 to Dallas, giving up 20 to Cooper Rush is probably like giving up like 35 to a normal NFL offense. So I haven't been impressed with their defense through 2 weeks either, to be quite honest. When it's mattered most, Pittsburgh was able to go and get a field goal. Dallas was able to go and get a field goal when it mattered most, both times, since his defense let them down at the end. But yeah, the problem is obviously the offense. I agree with you that I don't think that they're going to be able to get it fixed, but I also think at a certain point, if Joe Burrow stays healthy and you have Jamar and you have T. Higgins and you have Tyler Boyd, they're going to find ways to just score and win certain games. So I still don't think Cincy's going to be like terrible. Like, I don't think they're bad. I just think they're going to miss the playoffs, which is what I had before the year. But that's why, like, I had the Bengals missing the playoffs. I had them winning 8 or 9 games, and even I am shocked to see how bad it has looked through 2 weeks, even though they've been close in both games.
Yeah, I mean, we already know. I'm just going to go ahead and say the Dolphins have a wild card in the AFC East on lock. I don't think they can take the Bills for the division, but they've got a wild card on lock. Whoever doesn't win the division between the Chiefs and the Chargers has a wild card spot on lock. So there's only one left, and I don't think they're winning their division. I think the Ravens are going to do that. So it becomes a numbers game. And, the Cowboys, for their part, their defense has been better this season. They looked good. The defense looked good against Tampa Bay. They looked really good against the Bengals. Last season, they gave up a ton of yards and they got key turnovers, and that was bound to regress, but they've been more consistent this season. And Micah Parsons is what Chase Young was supposed to be. He's just a game wrecker, generational pass rusher, ironically, that nobody knew about when he was drafted. I mean, he was drafted to be an off-ball linebacker. Dallas just fell backwards into this. He had 7 pressures. He had a pass rush win rate over 25%. 1 in 4 times that he rushes the passer, he's beating his blocker just instantly. It's just incredible. And he gave the Bengals offensive line fits, and he's going to do that to a lot of offensive lines.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have to be the defensive player of the year for Dallas to continue to float along without Dak. And they have I think both of these teams have huge games coming up this week, with the Bengals playing the Jets in a game that the Bengals absolutely need to win in New York. This is a game they lost last year. They lost to New York against the Jets last year on the road. They can't do that again to start 0-3. And then you have the Cowboys. The Cowboys, I heard someone on a different show, it might have been right after the game. I heard someone say that the Cowboys winning games without Cooper Rush almost feels like +2 wins. Like you get 2 wins for that 1 win for however long Dak is out, because we thought that they were going to be so terrible. If they can find a way to beat the Giants on Monday Night Football and get to 2-1, and maybe that gives you an extra week or 2 to rest Dak and maybe even still be in the playoff race, that is a season-changing outcome on Monday Night Football for the Dallas Cowboys. So that's almost logic. I know this isn't the picks of the preview show. I've been thinking about that game a lot because, I do my gambling look-ins early in the week, and just to let people behind the scenes a little bit, I've been thinking about that game so much because all of the trends, all the numbers point towards the Giants should be favored by more and maybe bet the Giants. But I think this game might just be a lot more important to Dallas. Because I think the Giants, if you start 2-1, you're still feeling really good as the Giants organization and as Daboll and whatever. I think this might be like a kitchen sink game for Dallas.
Yeah, I could see it. It would be huge for them if they could come out with another win. So let's roll on here. We've got a couple games left. Denver. They play host to Houston, and they win 16-9. The story of this game is just how bad is Nathaniel Hackett. Like he is getting the Adam Gase treatment. It turns out maybe that anybody could have been Aaron Rodgers' offensive coordinator. He was booed in his first home game. They've got 25 penalties in 2 games, and the crowd literally started counting down the play clock during the game. I don't know if you saw that, but
yeah, I did. I noticed it live as it was happening, and I was like, "Is this for real? Like, is this actually what's happening?"
Yeah, they had the comedic sequence of calling a tight end rush on 3rd and short, and then they were going to kick a field goal, but they took too long and to get out on the field, so there was a delay of game, and then they had to punt. They were out of timeouts with 8 minutes left in the game. They took 1 timeout because they didn't have a punt returner on the field. Another one to avoid a delay of game.
And wait, real quick before we move on from that one, to avoid the delay of game, do you know what down it was and what the distance was?
Oh, I didn't write that down, but what was it?
2nd and 18. They avoided a delay of game on 2nd and 18. Got to preserve a prime opportunity there on 2nd and 18.
Yeah, I'm prepared right now to say that Hackett is Adam Gase and he's going to be one and done.
I think he's Anthony Lynn. That would be my counter, because the thing about Hackett, and I know you had the clip there about Aaron Rodgers, and it's not hard to be his OC. I don't think he was hired because of his work in Green Bay. I think he was hired because he made Blake Bortles, or he was a part of what made Blake Bortles a legitimate thing. Like, Blake Bortles was a top 5 fantasy quarterback one year and then went to the AFC Championship the next year. And a lot of people give Nathaniel Hackett that credit. I don't think the problem with Denver right now is play calling. I think the roster is nowhere near as good as people thought it was coming into the year. And then I think he's a complete buffoon in terms of handling the things that a head coach needs to handle outside of play calling. I think the play calling will be fine going down the stretch here. Hackett will be fine as an X's and O's coach. He simply cannot handle the duties of a head coach in the NFL. 2 weeks in, I can say that with full confidence. I've never seen a head coach struggle with such obviously things. Like, play Madden once, Nate. Play Madden once, Nathaniel Hackett, and learn how to manage a clock, learn how to manage your timeouts, and learn how to critically think on a clock. Like, It's astounding that these coaches don't just play Madden, Shane.
Yeah, that's a legit thing in like the Madden community, that like some of the pro players talk about how bad NFL coaches are at clock management, and like we could do better because we play like 20 games a day and they play one a week. But I got one more stray for Nathaniel Hackett to catch here, and that is, you want to know why Aaron Rodgers decided to come back to Green Bay this year?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
Hackett was gone. I'm just saying, but their red zone is a mess too. They're 0-7 in the red zone this year. 0-7.
Oh,
Russell Wilson went 14 of 31 passing. Richard Sherman went after him on Twitter. I don't know if you saw that either, but like somebody had like put the stats out there for Russ, 14 of 31, and Richard Sherman just quote tweeted it with a chef emoji. And it wasn't like the Texans were doing anything special. Lovie Smith basically played straight old school Tampa 2, and Russ wouldn't take the underneath stuff and drive down a field. So they're just a mess.
Russ has none of the mobility he had a couple years ago. When you watch Denver, you watch him escape the pocket. Go back and watch this game, or go back and watch week one, and you will see he's like tripped a couple times with no one around him on runs, and he just doesn't move with the same speed he used to move with at all. And he is in his lower, what is he, 32, 33 now, Russ? He's getting up there in age, and he's really lost athleticism and mobility that helped him in the past, not even just for running for first downs and running, but escaping pressure and escaping the pocket. I don't think he has that ability anymore. And it was a really, really bad game for Denver. And I just want to say, this Houston Texans team fought hard for David Culley last year, and they're fighting hard for Lovie Smith this year. So the Texans can't get away with firing another head coach that their team is fighting hard for. I'm kind of in on the Texans. Like, he went 19 for 38. He only had 177 yards. His QBR was 19.9. I watched Davis Mills, and I thought he played pretty well in this game. Like, I think Davis Mills is pretty decent given the situation of what he has around him. Damian Pierce actually had a pretty good game. I think he had like 70 yards. He was not involved really in the passing game, but he was a good running back in this game, and he was kind of the only guy who got carries, I think, for Houston. So, if Houston's going to give the rookie Damian Pierce a chance and let Davis Mills sling it all over the place, even if they only score 9 games, their defense is not going to be bad under Lovie Smith. So the Texans are another team. I think they're going to be frisky all year long.
Yeah, they're going to win a few games that they shouldn't win.
Mm-hmm.
And some team is going to miss the playoffs because they lose to the Texans in week 16 or something.
By the way, Texans play the Bears next week. I don't know if I'll be on the preview this week, but the Bears are a 3-point favorite. I love the Texans. Give me all the Texans +3 there.
All right. There you go. You heard it here first. Okay, let's roll on to the Arizona Cardinals at the Las Vegas Raiders. Arizona wins 29-23. Came alive in the second half, had touchdown drives of 9, 11, and 18 plays. Did you see Kyler's 2-point conversion?
Of course.
Did you see the video that Benjamin Solak put out with the circus music in the background?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I've never seen anything like that play in my life. I've never seen anything like it.
He traveled 84.8 yards on that 2-point conversion play. As the Raiders, this is another lead blown. Is any lead safe? That's the question on this podcast for this week. That's the theme of our episode. But the Raiders were winning 20-0 at halftime. Devontae Adams only had 2 catches for 12 yards in this game. But here's the stat. The Raiders going into this week, they were 39-0 when they had a 20-plus point halftime lead. Now they're 39-1. And you look at is Hunter Renfrow fumbles 2 times in 3 plays in overtime. The second one gets returned for a touchdown. Just brutal loss for the Raiders, who I'm willing to say the Raiders they're not going to make the playoffs. You can't start 0-2 in the AFC West. Maybe they can come back. I don't know. But I thought I was impressed with how they played the Chargers week 1. I guess I was impressed with how they played the first half of this week. man, the wheels fell off. So I'll retract that. They've still got a shot here, but man, they have got to stop shooting themselves in the foot before they fall out of it.
It's funny. I'm looking at their schedule. Their schedule actually is like a little easier than you'd think for them being in the AFC West. Like they do get the AFC South, which makes their schedule a little bit easier.
Uh,
I know you're high on the Jags, but the other three teams have not looked good. Um, the next week is going to be like I said, I feel like week three's got a lot of big games in terms of importance already. But Raiders Titans 0-2 versus 0-2, that's loser leaves town. Like whoever loses that game, I am willing to say like they're probably cooked. I'm not willing to say that about the Raiders quite yet. You laid out that the Dolphins are going to get that one wild card, and the Chargers or the Chiefs are going to get that other wild card. That third wild card, I think, is going to be wide open for whether that be the Patriots, the Steelers, the Browns, the Bengals. It won't be anyone from the AFC South. It won't be the Broncos. The Raiders can sneak in there just because there's not going to be a lot of teams vying for that last wild card spot, kind of the same way that they snuck in last year in that last wild card spot. But I do think the Raiders, it's concerning for them to melt down the way that they did, especially under a new coach. That team really fought hard for Rich Bisaccia last year down the stretch. I haven't seen that same level of fight for Josh McDaniels. So that'll be something to watch down the stretch. But I tweeted out during the middle of this game that the Arizona Cardinals are an unmitigated disaster, and they immediately threw that right back in my face. And I'm glad Kyler had those moments and those big plays to kind of remind people, like, hey guys, I'm still really good, because I think sometimes that gets forgotten about in the Kyler Murray conversation. I think he almost gets criticized to a degree that I don't think any other player in the NFL. I won't say any other player in the NFL. I think he is criticized more than most quarterbacks in the NFL. I don't know what that is about Kyler. I think we've talked about it before on this show, but I think people are hypercritical of Kyler. So it's nice for him to come out and make these huge, fun, incredible plays to remind people that he is a star.
well, he can thank his organization for bringing a lot of that on him.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. I mean, yeah, the Cardinals are bad still. I do not think the Cardinals are very good at all. I think Kyler Murray is a magician.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's roll on to the Sunday night game. We've only got two games left here. Chicago travels to Green Bay, and they predictably get beat 27-10. Green Bay's defense just dominated the Bears' offense. Chicago had 4 3-and-outs, and they only ran 41 plays on the night. The Bears only allowed Justin Fields to throw 11 passes, which I don't get it. You're not a playoff contender. Why don't you go see what you have in Justin Fields? I know that's hard without there being many weapons around him, but I just don't. I dislike how the Bears are handling Justin Fields. For the Packers, I don't know what we learned. It was a big game from Aaron Jones. He had 132 yards on 15 carries, 38 yards through the air, and a touchdown each way. The Packers are now 1-1. I still don't really know what to make of them. I'm kind of in a wait and see pattern with them.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I hate what the Bears are doing with Fields. I said all offseason that there is no quarterback in a worse position to succeed in the NFL than Justin Fields with the weapons that he was given, with the coaching staff that they hired, going defensive minded. I think that's what you're seeing. I think you're seeing a defensive minded game plan with Justin Fields as a young quarterback here, and it's not going to win games long term. So the Bears showed who the Bears were in this game. Packers, it's wait and see. They'll probably be fine because they have Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, really good defense, and a really good head coach. So Packers will probably be fine. I just, this game said more about the Bears than it said about the Packers. Part of me says I should be concerned about Justin Fields, and maybe it's time to have a conversation that they're not willing to let him throw the ball. But then again, it's like that's not his fault at all. Like this team is just so incompetent. I'm not going to read into it and say like there's something going on that's causing them to not believe in him enough to throw them the ball. They're incompetent. I don't know what else to say. You can't surround Justin Fields with one legitimate receiver in Darnell Mooney and absolutely nothing else, and then basically not be able to get the ball to Mooney at all.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we'll see. They had a bad situation. The new regime walked into a bad situation, and I just we'll see. I was a big Fields guy. I still believe in Fields. I just haven't really. I feel like you don't have much of a chance to evaluate him yet. So
Yeah, he was drafted into such a terrible spot.
yeah. Okay, let's roll on to the other Monday night game. Tennessee at Buffalo, the Bills with extra rest. And the question I have after this game is it possible for anybody to stop the Bills? And they put up 72 points in 2 games against the reigning Super Bowl champion and the 1 seed from the AFC. And yes, the Titans were a fraudulent 1 seed. We know that, but it's still impressive. Shout out Stephon Diggs for 148 yards and 3 touchdowns, winning me my fantasy game. Um, the other question I have is, are we seeing the end of Derrick Henry? He had 13 carries for 25 yards in this game. And it's not fair to him to just point that out. I mean, Tannehill has been awful. They have no wide receivers, so teams just stack the box. But teams have done that to the Titans for years, and Henry was able to do something about it. And the Titans just are spiraling here. Tannehill was benched. They sat him down in the fourth quarter, put Malik Willis in, 1 of 4 for 6 yards with a fumble. So, I mean, Willis, I'd just play Willis personally, but I think they'll stick with Tannehill for a while. The other thing I thought was funny out of this game is the Bills finally had to punt, and it went for a 50-yard gain as Kyle Phillips muffed the punt right back to the Bills. So even when the Bills lose, they win. They get 50 yards on a punt. That's got to be the highest EPA punt that's ever been recorded in the NFL.
I'm ready to say that it's Malik Willis time. Put Malik Willis in. Ryan Tannehill stinks. They should have been done with Ryan Tannehill the moment he literally ruined their season last year, throwing a pick on the first and last throw of the game against the Bengals.
I mean, the moment they traded A.J. Brown, you're rebuilding. So let's get the rookie out there.
Yeah, I totally agree. Ryan Tannehill is not the answer. And you asked, can anybody stop the Buffalo Bills? And I have 2 teams who I think can defensively. And it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and it's the LA Chargers. Those are the 2 teams who I think their defenses are set up to potentially give the Bills problems, or at least enough problems to outscore the Bills and beat them in a game. The Bills are really good. I understand that they probably belong at number 1 in power rankings any way you slice it. I will just say there's beginning to become a narrative across and it's been it's been percolating since the offseason. There's beginning to become a narrative that they are so far ahead of everybody else, and they're so far ahead of the Chiefs and so far ahead of the Chargers and anybody else you want to throw out there, the Bucks. I'm not there yet. I think that they are very much in the same tier as the Chiefs, Chargers, and Bucks, because I think all 4 of those teams are really, really, really good. But I'm not there yet to say that the Bills are so by far and away the best team in the NFL.
Yeah, I have them number 1 in my power rankings, but you put them against the Chiefs on a neutral field right now, or the Chargers. I don't know who I'm picking. I mean, I'd probably pick the Bills, but I think it'd be a great game. So they've looked really good. They faced a tough team week 1. Week 2, we kind of knew how that was going to go, but they took care of business. So
yeah, for sure. They did everything you could have expected them to do in that game.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is it. That does it. We're putting a bow on week 2, our full NFL week 2 review show. Mark, do you have any final thoughts that you didn't get out there that you want to get off your chest?
Final thoughts. Where do I want to go with this? I will go ahead and say take the over in Eagles Commanders. I think it's set at 47 right now. I would take that before it goes up, because it opened at 50. It has went down to 47. I know that the Eagles defense looked really, really, really good. I think we're going to see kind of what happened with the Commanders in both weeks. Commanders go down early, and then they just go balls to the wall. And Carson Wentz, even though he probably is going to have some interceptions or a fumble, he'll go out and throw a couple touchdowns, and this will end up being like a 35-24 game. So I think that this is going to end up being a much higher scoring game than people are expecting. So that's my little Eagles Commanders preview early in the week for gambling.
All right, I'm all about it. Okay, well, that is going to do it here. Thank you all for joining us for episode number 71 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard on the show, and we know that you do, be sure you smash that subscribe button so you don't miss our next episode. Drop us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. That helps us get the word out. You can follow me on Twitter at @halfandhalf_TPL. You can give Mark a follow at Mark Henry Jr. So from me, from Mark, from the Painted Lines, we'll see you guys next time.